go. Call this meeting to order. What's my roll call?
Here.
I need to say that again, sorry. Mary Grady.
Here.
Greg Reynolds.
Here.
Keith Blumendahl. Kat Cottrell.
Here.
Sarah Eford. Johnny Davis.
Here.
Tammy Hansen.
Okay. Need to approve the minutes of the November 12th meeting. Motion?
Make a motion, we approve the minutes from the meeting of November 12th, 2015.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay. This is for somebody. Staff report.
Chairman, Commissioners, at our Tuesday night council meeting, we talked about the North End Street Traffic Plan, and that was more of a technicality than anything. We've talked about it several times at council level. They just had not adopted the ordinance. So they actually adopted an ordinance that all streets located between Canal and Carolina Beach Avenue North from Pelican to Saltmarsh will be designated as no parking. And no change on this one, but they said all the same streets would be designated as two-way. And if you remember, our code said they were one-way. And so we clarified that, or made that consistent with what's actually happening. Professional site plans for single and two-family dwellings is something that you heard last time, basically for our plot plans. Right now we require a foundation and an as-built, and we were looking at requiring a survey plot plan. We actually talked to council about this item and recommended that we give it a go at staff level on the plot plan to have our zoning inspection, the stormwater inspection, the water and sewer inspection go out at the same time. The thing that we were struggling with, that we were hoping to capture with the survey, is easements. That's what our big concern was. After talking to some surveyors, they're not going to pick up on easements unless there's something on that lot that denotes there's utilities or drainage, or something. They can see something there, like there's a manhole in the middle of the lot. Then they would say, okay, we need to do some diligence here and find out if there's an easement. So knowing that, our only other alternative was requiring them to do a title search, which would be extremely expensive. And one of our problems is most of our easements we're finding on properties we don't have, or most of our utilities on properties don't have easements. So a title search wouldn't help if there's no easement there. So those three folks going out and really taking a good look at what they look at, but talking together and looking at the lots together to find out if there's anything unique about the property. So basically, I was saying all that, try to sum it up. Mary's looking at me like I'm crazy. But to sum it up, we didn't change anything with that one. We just left it as is and see if we can't find some of these unknown easements and utilities on our own. And then the amend as-built surveys to be consistent with site plan requirements. That was for things like parking and HVACs and those types of things that we want to see on a survey, but often get left out. We wanted to have clear guidance for developers and surveyors to know that those are things we want to see. So there was no issues there. Council approved that one.
Do we get blame on this one, Harry Oaks?
A lot of the, yeah, sure.
Take that,
So.
please. Okay. Any other discussion with Ed? Public
Pass.
pass. Okay. Anybody sign up for public discussion? 7 people? Get live. All right. Let's go to item 1 and the final item. Text amendment. Make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Really?
Here, let me read it.
Read it, you make a motion.
Who gets the pleasure of presenting this? That's what I thought. I want you to know I brought a longer legal pad today. So take notes.
So you get to be involved in a much longer Unicode process that we're going through. And part of the Unicode is, of course, there's a zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance, which is what you got in your packet. I didn't mean to scare you with that. It was just the complete ordinance with the substantial changes that were being made. And really the changes that we were looking at, really it got down to 4 areas. And it's either we were just making a correction, that maybe there was a mistake being made in the past, or there was inconsistencies between codes, or it's just repetitiveness that we've had between different articles. And lastly, our main goal was to update it with general statutes. Over the years, things have gotten adopted by the state that we should be following, but it never made its way into the town code. This is just the layout of our existing code of ordinances. You can kind of see it has different parts and articles and chapters and bylaws. So in the first part, it just kind of lays out what the government of Carolina Beach is and the powers and duties and what each description is and how we function as a government. And in part 2, this is where you have your actual code of ordinances and the regulations, and you have within different departments has their requirements. In Chapter 12, Planning and Development, that is where the subdivision regulations are. There were other things in there as far as like the flood ordinance. And then at the very bottom was almost like an afterthought. And it was an appendix to the code, and that was your zoning. But it is part of the town code. So there was existing 23 articles there now. The new proposed code is going to be 18 articles, and the zoning and all the development regulations is going to be within chapters, and you'll have 40 chapters. So that's just a brief overview of. It's not a rewrite, but it's a reorganization. So here's what the 18 articles look like now. Like I said, with each your chapter 40. So you're going to have chapter 40, article 1, article 2, etc. And I'm going to run down the changes at any time. If you have any questions, please stop me. The first one is just in Article 1, which is some strike-through language, where it talks about the general provisions and introduction to the zoning ordinance. And the effective date, the current ordinance that we have now was adopted in 2000. This is going to be a newly adopted ordinance, so all this will change. And then the relationship to the previously adopted zoning, well, this will be a new zoning, and it will actually, what requirements or what was in this zoning ordinance really will have nothing to do with the newly adopted regulations. So it's going to be a brand new document. In Article 3, this is more of an inconsistency that we had between under every lot shall have access to a street in our subdivision ordinance. And in our subdivision, every lot shall have at least 50 foot of road frontage. Well, this requirement, and if you have an existing easement, you can certainly honor it and you can build off of it. But if it's a new easement, and it has with 3 or less lot owners, it doesn't allow you to create any new easements, and that's what we're trying to get away from. So that was the strike-through language there. That's existing. You certainly build on it, but you couldn't create any more access easements to put a lot that doesn't have access to a street.
How would that affect something like I'm doing with Spencer Farland with those 3 houses on that one lot?
That is one property, and you have your frontage. It's like 150 feet. But you just went through a PUD, so you have 3 houses on one lot. It's not a true subdivision where you would have the association set up. In Article 3, this was just an error that was in there with a height overlay district. It was in there as 50 feet, but it's actually 45 feet, and that's the area around the R1 by the lake that abuts between the mixed use and R3 area. That kind of, we had some 50-foot houses going there. So the residents were like, "Whoa, this is really tall from the one-story traditional houses that were around it." So we in R3 is 40 feet. So it's just a compromise between R3 height limit and R1 was a 45 height limit. We also added a couple of uses, or I used temporary healthcare structures, which I'll get into a little bit of what that is, but that was a general statute that was adopted, a specific use that we had to make provisions for. And we struck through electronic gaming devices, which there was a loophole, and they started opening up all around the state with the general statute language. We actually denied one. They appealed. They won the appeal. They opened up in town. So then we created regulations for them and allowed it. So now the state went back and tightened up the language, and then they were all closed down by statute. So we don't have any. They're not allowed anymore. So there's no reason for us to have that language in our ordinance. This is just the update our flood zone ordinance, and it just, instead of just putting exactly every time we have an ordinance change or a new map adopted, we just put in some general statement to what the flood map insurance that's into effect at that time. Same thing, our off-street parking with the electronic gaming operations. We had a parking standard that's no longer needed. Our landscaping and development ordinance change. This is about tree preservation, and really this is just kind of mushy language. It didn't have any teeth. It just said we encourage it and we like for you to do it, but we really don't have any. There was no enforcement behind if someone cut down a tree. We do have landscaping and buffer requirements for commercial development and multifamily that you have to go by, but if you cut trees down, you can replant them in the buffer, and that's what we require. But there's nothing in there, in our ordinance now that says you have to preserve trees. And there's no teeth in this. It just says if you do it without a permit, then basically we'll slap you on the hand. But we already have a violation process if you're clearing a lot without a permit. Our drainage and stormwater, there was just a quick regulation on that, but that's all it was. I mean, there was just a blurb on it that directed you back into the code of ordinances, and there's a whole stormwater ordinance within our town code, so there's really no reason to have a reference in our to direct you to that article in our zoning ordinance for a whole article just by itself. In Article 12, or formerly Article 12, these are just introduction. When the first thing in the article, it says all uses must have these. But if you look at the use as far as has to have ingress and egress, it has to have fencing, has to vegetative buffers, outdoor storage, or the grading and filling vegetation. It has to have parking and loading areas. Well, those are already part of our codes, so it's really repetitive, saying that, okay, these uses have to address these. Well, our code already addresses those in other areas. So we struck that out. And this is just electronic gaming operations regulations. So they went away. This is just manufacturing, assembly, and processing. And it's a little confusing because it would tell you, it'll say it's allowed and go to Article 12, but then it would tell you what's not allowed. So we're like, well, and in our Article 3 of a permitted use table, it tells us what manufacturing, assembly, and processing uses are allowed. So it's a little confusing. So we struck that out. And also in Article 12, structural encroachments into the public right-of-way. It's a little out of place because this is not a use, and we have a whole section in our Code of Ordinances that talks about what's allowed in our right-of-ways. This is the temporary health care structure, better known as the granny flat allowance. Somewhere in North Carolina, somebody came in to a planning office and said, I want to bring in a portable unit to house my grandma so I can take care of her. And they were denied. So that person said, well, I'll show you. And they got it approved by the state to allow for these, essentially these granny flats. And they're limited in size, and they're to 300 square feet, but in their specific allowance for if, for single-family homes, that if you have a relative caretaker that you have adopted that needs help and that is doctor prescribed, and we have a certification for that we would have to allow that second unit, essentially is what it is.
We can't override that at all.
No.
At all.
The state said no. The state said we must allow that.
Is that like a travel trailer?
But it's really specific allowance regulations.
Well, we
So
know.
yeah, I mean, it's,
300 square feet.
yeah.
Mary, there's hope for both of us. Nowhere to us.
Well, I don't like that at all.
Well, if it's state allowed, we can't.
Well, they
override
also
state.
allow the boxcars too, which isn't a good idea either, so.
Box.
300 square feet, so it could be a travel trailer type thing?
It has to be on a
On
foundation. It has to hook up to our water and sewer.
Has to hook up to water and sewer?
But it's temporary. As soon as that person passes away or moves away, then they have to move it.
You might want it on wheels depending on how old she is.
Yeah.
So
So
just-
this isn't for the health care provider, this is for
Granny.
Granny? Just for Granny?
Just a relative. Yeah.
Just a relative?
No, grandpa touch.
And how can we
If
make
you look at
them
number 6,
take
that's
it
not what
out?
it says.
How can you make them take it out? I mean, they can bring it in, how do you make them take it out?
She's about to.
Well, they have to have an annual certification that person's still there, and that so the doctor says yes, they still need help.
Okay.
Jeremy, look at
And
number
I-
6.
Number 6, the caretaker. Number 7 is the patient.
And I think, well, that's the state statute. And if the person decides I'll go live in the 300 square foot, and you can have my house, I guess whoever's living in who.
But you got to have a certification that someone's physically impaired, and the caretaker can live in that house, or the patient can live in that house.
Yeah. You want to flip flop and say take my home.
Or I can live in the house with my nurse. That's what my clothing years.
Well, it seems to me if they're that bad off, they should be living in the same facility as the person who's here.
And I guess the allowance was so they would have their own space.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, we know how hard it is to get people to remove things, even the old junky automobile. I'm still removing this. This is just,
And actually, the first state to adopt this was Virginia.
it's got to be okay.
So, has there been any cases that you know where they've done it and made someone remove it?
I don't think there has been.
We're small.
I don't know of any allowances or cases where it's actually been one's been permitted.
Carry on.
We also had a 28-page wireless communication ordinance that was adopted a few years ago by a private firm who came in and told us this is what we need.
Fancy paperwork.
This is the UNC government ordinance that they have drafted and recommend. And basically what it is it does allow wireless facilities everywhere in town. Even residential. But there's a few things that kick in then a conditional use permit as far as the height. So you could have one in a commercial zoning district if it's less than 50 feet. And we get a lot of inquiries about putting them up on some of the high-rise on top. In some areas it's not even allowed, or it's allowed by conditional use. So they try to streamline that. And then if it's in an industrial district, which is mainly across from Dow Road, it's 150 feet is the limit permitted by right. And if it's in a residential district, it's less than 50 feet, but it has to be a concealed wireless facility. It means it has to be camouflaged in some way or disguised, so it doesn't look like obtrusive or a cell phone. Yeah. And then modifications, or if there are emergency situations where you have to have a portable antenna or something, it has some allowances as well. If it doesn't meet those, then it goes and kicks it into a conditional use permit. This is just about how many papers or plans that we need for a conditional use permit approval process, which is 9 copies. Just kind of strikes through what we needed and talks about we need an electronic copy as well, and the days that we need the information so we can review it and research it and give it to you in a timely manner.
That's a lot.
It is a through. This is the plan unit development regulations, and it was just repetitive language that talks about what your height was, what your setbacks were, what your parking is, what your fence regulations are, and all of that is already covered. So it didn't need to be listed again in plan unit developments. Same thing that we used to have years ago, an acreage requirement. Well, now it was voted to have none. So why even have that listed? So we struck that out. And also, same thing with height. It was listed out, and it's whatever zoning district that plan unit development is going in, that's your height regulation. This is the Board of Adjustment, and this was in 2013. They did make some significant changes to them. One was, it said that during a variance assault, you have 10 days, but not more than 25 days prior to the date of the hearing to post a lot. So that's just more of a staff requirement. So it did just have 10, but they actually, well, you don't need to have it more than 25 days out. A big change was the appeals process, and this is the new language. And I know it's probably hard to read, but I just put it in there. But it's basically they used to have person aggrieved, and it lays out who can appeal, and you have to have standing. Either you have to be a neighbor, or you have to be a partner of the property, or you could be city town council could appeal. And typically, the Board of Adjustment, you have to have 4/5 vote to pass. Well, during appeal, you can just have the majority. So that's a change. So.
Bona fide.
And then it just lays out when to post the property, who to notify, how many days do you have to appeal. So it just gives you a rundown of those. But that's all general statute language. And part of that process is we did have our prior attorney adopted the appeal process, and then the state bar recommended that language to general statute, which was adopted. So with our existing language in the new general statute, I do want to have our attorney take a look at it, so it's more or less attorney on attorney language reviewing that. If anything in there may not quite make sense to you. And also with the, continuing on with the Board of Adjustment, they, when there's a variance to the ordinance, that goes to the Board of Adjustment. And it had 6 criteria that you had to prove to the Board of Adjustment before you could grant a variance. They reworded that, and they took reasonable use of the land. You used to have to prove that in order to grant a variance, you could not make any reasonable use of the land. Well, that was very difficult, and it was really hard for the Board of Adjustment to get their mind around that, because really, if you can't, what is that? All right, if you don't get a variance, you get a 500 square foot house instead of a 800 square foot house. Is that reasonable use of the land? So they removed that statement and practical difficulties from meeting the ordinance. They removed practical difficulties because they're really struggling with that terminology. So that is removed, and they streamlined the 4 criteria that you have to meet in order to grant variance. And one of the criteria was that no change in the permitted use table through a variance. So if it's not allowed in that district, if you're in a residential district and you want to put a convenience store, well, that doesn't even go to BOA, even for their consideration. It's just automatically denied at staff level. This was in the Code of Ordinances. We did adopt this in our zoning ordinance, which it never translated, and we haven't had an architectural review board in 14 years. But this was in our CBD when we try to once have standards for architectural review.
Was that gone completely new?
Yes, and it's actually it was adopted, but somewhere through the translation through Unicode, it was never pulled out. So that's one change we want to make sure that they remove from the code. Another change, this was in 2015, is about protest petitions, and this is for rezonings. So before, if Mr. Reynolds wanted to open up a bar on 7th and Cape Fear, and needed a rezoning, Mary didn't like it, and she wanted to put a protest petition in. She had to file with the town clerk 2 days prior to the hearing, and then she would have to get within 100 feet of that buffer. She'd have to get 5% of the owners to sign it. And then what that really only meant was, instead of a majority for the rezoning to pass, it went to supermajority, say 4/5 with our town council. Well, all that's now, they just got rid of all of it. So now if you want to petition a rezoning, you pretty much can do it about anything else that's not quasi-judicial. You can write in your comments to town council. You could just, you can stand up here and just say, hey, and there's no option. If 3/4, the majority, so it has to be at least 3 to pass the rezoning. So that has gone away. Let's see here. All right, definitions, just electronic gaming operations, no longer needed. Performance residential development was still a definition, but it's something we've struck out of the allowance 5 or 6 years ago. The new definitions was temporary health care, and it just defines activities of daily living, what a caregiver is, what a relative is, and what mentally impaired person is. And now we go through our subdivisions. So that's our zoning in a nutshell.
I feel like I'm reading Obamacare.
Let's just pass it.
We'll read it later.
That's what they did.
Yeah, I can go through this. Most of it's just mostly in the subdivision, it was standards that we took out to be consistent with GOT regulations, and it was just updating because it really was first written 40 years ago. So there's some sign-offs and signatures that needed to be there that really, and where we needed to send it to, that there's agencies that don't even exist anymore. And then it talked about floodlands. Well, we have a whole flood ordinance that addresses that. So we struck through all that. But I can answer any questions or anything you may have on that. I don't know if Ed has anything that he may want to touch on or address.
A lot of hard work went into this, didn't it?
Yeah, just trying to find all the changes and what, when, and where.
Mm-hmm.
And
How long did it take you all to do it?
And some of the 6 years, the general statute, that's probably trying to read through that
Yeah.
to know exactly what part of the code needed to be updated.
You're not snaking anything through, are you?
You got it right there in front of you.
Jeez. Yeah, that's my problem. You didn't put parking requirements in CBD or anything, did you?
No, it didn't change any regulation.
So does this make it simpler so that when some other new staff comes into your organization, this will be clear on what the definitions are, and it'll
Yeah.
help y'all run smoother?
Yeah, and we try to put all the development ordinances or regulations all together, so it's clear, and you don't have to go hunting them down. And where is it in this chapter, this article? Where is it?
So it defines it better for y'all to make your job more efficient.
That is the goal. We hope so.
Okay, good. That's a lot. Well, yeah.
And off the record, I just had two texts since we've been here. One said my wife's prescription was not allowed by the new Obamacare rules. And the next one says it's ready for pickup. So,
You better go get it quick.
Hopefully, that's not what we're adopting.
so no. So, you've always got Blue Cross Blue Shield. You'll know what you're going through. They've gone to hell the last 3 weeks.
Blue Cross Blue Shield?
Yeah. Yeah, it's bad.
You try to get your new insurance cards.
It's bad.
Anyway.
Okay, so
I
I
was
guess,
off the record.
do we, discussion, is that what we're going to?
Well, actually, we asked Mr. Curtis any questions we have, and I'm going to trust you.
Yeah,
That's my one second.
It's a lot of
I'm going
meat.
to trust that you've done the best
Right.
interest in town.
There's probably only the major rewrite of a regulation is probably going to be the cell towers,
Yeah.
where it's just a complete rewrite, and it is allowed everywhere in town, with those regulations.
I remember when they presented that. Did that ever come to fruition on Dow Road?
Yes, and they built it,
Is it up there? Oh,
but there's
okay.
nobody's located on it yet.
Oh, okay.
And it also allows allowances also for the town. 'Cause we've gotten requests to put stuff on our telephone poles. And really, it's the data. That's what's they're having to come in, and we need. They like to do it real quick and really update all their Netflix.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, people aren't making phone calls anymore. It's just starting to go back and update all their equipment because of data.
Oh. I'm so behind on that stuff. Well, thank you for that.
So I guess keep everything in order. Everybody, so do we have to? This is a item for public comment, so we need to open up for public hearing.
Yeah.
Just to be able to be correct. Motion open public hearing.
Make a motion to open a public hearing.
Thank you. Any comments from the public? Thank you. Motion to close public hearing.
Motion to close public hearing. Discussion.
Any discussion?
I don't know what to say.
Commission, if we do have a quorum.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything really jumped out at me. It's just, I trust these folks in our fine planning department to not snuck anything in on this. I'm hoping the council reads it thoroughly and understands it all. I know two people on the council that will.
Well, I give kudos to you guys too, because I presume this took a long time and a lot of hard work to streamline your job. So congratulations and job well done.
We hope. May I make so you need a motion for us for approval, Mr. Ferguson?
Okay.
Would you like to make a motion?
I don't know where that's at.
And it's consistent with land use plan and general and long-range plans.
No,
I need my little cheat sheet.
I know. Land use plan and the long range plan?
For general conditions.
Yeah. Do you have the verbiage there, Craig?
Oh, see, I don't.
We need our cheat sheets on our agendas.
Yeah. It's not in here. Do you have it?
No, I'm trying. He's going to walk us through it. Make a motion to approve the text amendment for the municipal code with Appendix A zoning, Chapter 12, Article 3 subdivision regulations, and find it consistent with the land use plan, the four general conditions, is that what it's for, specific, and you don't have any general conditions. Is that right? How's that for you? And you put that in our kids' name if you like.
No.
Right.
Do you need a date, effective date, or is this good
No,
enough?
it goes to council now.
Oh, okay.
We're recommending approval, is the gist of the motion.
Second?
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I feel like I live
Mary, you
my
got your wish. Okay, non-agenda items.
Kim, here, that's for you. Love that, yeah.
You don't put it in
I'll give them, they're pinned up on my bulletin board. A non-agenda item, I have project passes for all.
Oh, bless your heart, thank you.
They're in my office, so before you leave, let's run up to the office, I'll get them for you.
All right.
For your fine work, we appreciate all your service. Any other non-agenda items? Do everything good coming up?
It just smiles.
Is the Huddle House, the Toggle House, whatever it's called, is that that's about right, isn't it?
Yes, sir, but we're anticipating getting Harris Teeter plans in tomorrow, so that'll come back to you, because they had changed to circulation, major modification.
Good, I got to miss it the first time, I'll see it the second time.
We'll see you the next round.
Is it going to still happen, do you think? Is everybody kind of happy? People have been late?
They are telling us the plan that they have, we've asked them to confirm that DOT has approved this plan.
Okay,
So,
cool. How's the Bennett Lane folks feeling?
we'll see. You might see them next
I see
month.
a lot of folks. Everybody, I'm sure everybody knows Bennett Lane's a right turn only, I believe, once this happens.
Oh,
That we should get the submittal tomorrow, but that's what we're anticipating seeing.
If you ever try to take a left, it's pretty much right turn only anyway, but I'd hate to be told I couldn't take a left.
what would the theory be? You turn right and go where?
Last resort.
Oh,
That would be great.
We've asked them to address that.
whichever you take, yeah.
So,
Well,
Where's the Huddle House?
Huddle House is, you've got the number, but it's opposite, it's right beside Unique Boutique.
it's the southeast corner of Lake Park and Hamlet.
okay.
Across from Justin Donovan's property.
What's there new?
Chain link fence and
Nothing.
There's one
White House.
little house and then vacant land.
Is that a 24-hour operation?
I think it's very similar to Waffle
It
House.
typically isn't. If anything, I'd say it's a step up from Waffle House. The menu and everything's a lot nicer. They're nicer facilities. They got rooftop dining until someone builds something between them and the ocean. For the view anyway. But have rooftop dining, it's 24 hours. I've been to them, I've been to one in Myrtle Beach. Pretty
Oh,
nice.
really? I've never heard
It's a
of
good
it.
place to hang out at 3 in the morning.
Sometimes you get too drunk to get off.
Yeah, my friends here to get across the bridge. It's very interesting that they picked us for this. And this is some other thing, guys. I heard these aren't items, so these are actually general discussion. These Old Salties has a new tenant potential.
Yeah.
I heard
There
that
is.
too.
There is
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
They do have a new tenant. They signed the lease the other
Apply for
day.
anything.
something roost,
Yes, and it's a.
Buzz Roost.
We haven't seen them come in planning yet.
Well, do
One
they really?
downtown and there's one in Georgia.
Yeah, I've spoken with them, and they had interest at that time, so I guess.
I heard
They signed the
it was a done deal.
What is it?
It's a.
It's almost, you almost got a chain of restaurants, there's 3 of them, but it's got wings, ribs,
Oh.
oysters.
Sort of like what Old Salty's is.
Now, what about the building on the corner across from Sitco there that Bigley had? I heard Somebody-
Gulfstream has purchased it, Ed Thomas,
he purchased it.
or he's in a deal to purchase it.
Oh, good for him.
I think he's leasing now, but he's got the first option to purchase it.
So it's Nicky or whatever his name is done. The Japanese guy that had it.
Oh, Ty. His name's Ty. He's out there. This is all new. He's got no interference from the ownership group now, so he's still going to do a buffet, he said.
Oh, he is.
And he's going to do an enhanced tiki bar on the roof if it's allowed. So that's already up.
Yeah, right. Well, good for him.
So it's the new owners of Gulfstream.
Yep.
Interesting.
There's a lot happening. We're on the upswing.
Yeah.
But they're keeping Gulfstream too.
Price of lots are going up.
Are they?
There's lots
Good. Word on the street, Flamin' Amy's will be open around the 25th.
That's what I talked to Amy, that's what she told me.
Yeah. So, that'll be good.
Just all kinds of.
Good things are happening here at the beach.
All right, any other things? Any football or basketball on tonight?
Debate.
The debate?
Oh, that's right.
It's a Republican one, right?
Yeah.
Should be fine. I fall asleep. Okay. Motion to adjourn, Sarah? Mary. Sarah's absence.
I'll make the motion.
To adjourn. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. See you guys next month.
I said, speak into the microphone.
I didn't expect it until I started looking at this on.
That's a lot of stuff.
So will you, when council approves all this,
Need a cheat sheet.
oh,
How are they going to do that? I mean, this is impressive. How you guys went through it line item by line item,
Across from
paragraph
Kate's
by.
Pancake.
I mean, don't